The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock on most tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen, of stars and shadow shimmering. Tinuviel was dancing there, to music of a pipe unseen, and light of stars was in her hair, and in her raiment glimmering. There Beren came from mountains cold, and lost he wandered under leaves, and where the elven river rolled, he walked alone and sorrowing. He peered between the hemlock leaves, and saw in wonder flowers of gold upon her mantle and her sleeves, and her hair like shadow following. Why not?
What are we drinking tonight, Ethan?
The best beer in the United States, although I understand I am going to be given an argument to the contrary. New Holland Dragon's Milk.
So you're saying it's better than Tales of Gold, then?
Amend my statement, the best stout in the country. Tales of Gold, the amber ale from this same brewery, is possibly in the top 3 beers that I have ever tasted. And this is certainly top 5. This is the only stout I've ever had that can compete with Guinness.
When it's double
and
the
it might
ABV.
actually beat it.
Yeah, it's good, it's rich.
It doesn't have as much of the bitterness that Guinness sometimes does. There's like a bitter aftertaste with Guinness sometimes, and this doesn't. It has kind of the I don't know if there's supposed to be chocolatey undertones in this, but you know that the aftertaste you get sometimes when you eat like really dark chocolate? That's what this reminds me of. So either it's the same kind of sensation or there's actual chocolate in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of the bitterness that Guinness can have, but
Notes of coffee and chocolate, yeah.
What I'm remembering of the taste of both in my mind after you say that, like, there just isn't that with the Dragon's Milk because of the richness, the whiskiness, I guess, of it.
Oh yeah,
Like,
sweet undertones of vanilla and oak from a 3-month stay in bourbon barrels.
So that is the first bourbon barrel aged beer that I've had. I've had some since. That's the OG. So sitting down with a goblet of that and a cheeseburger and fries at JL Beers in Bismarck.
Yeah, I was there. That's the first time I ever had that.
Yep, that was darn good.
That was a really good burger I had too.
Yeah, they do them good. Should go back there sometime.
We should.
We got folks we can visit.
Bismarck trip.
Yeah. Should be good. So for mine, I have something from a local place up here, Surly Brewing, in the cities. And I did not realize this before tonight when I waltzed over and was looking for something to buy, but they do annual releases. And so this is their 17th year release, which was in 2023. And somehow it still existed on a shelf in a liquor store. It is a type of beer that comes in a can, and that can comes in a box, which I've never seen before this evening. But
that's how Minnesotans feel fancy.
It has a fly on it, and a fly because bar flies. As the story goes, a Prohibition-era secret society of cocktail enthusiasts, known only as the International Barflies, formed at Harry's New York bar in Paris, the alleged birthplace of the Boulevardier, and the inspiration for 17, which is what this beer is, 17. Our 2023 anniversary beer blends a strong red ale and a wee heavy, aged in Tattersall bitter orange liquor barrels and 10-year Henry McKenna bourbon barrels, echoing the Boulevardier's timeless flavor profile. Keep it a secret or share it with your fellow barflies. It's an 11%, so it's the same as your Dragon's Milk.
Okay.
So I'll be sipping this pint nice and slow this evening. Well, hopefully. But I don't think I've had a beer quite like this before. You can tell, like, they say the orange liquor, the orange liqueur barrels, you can definitely get that out of there. You get some stuff that's maybe reminiscent of maybe it's just my imagination, but reminiscent of the barrel aging that, Dragon's Milk underwent. Granted, it's not a stout. I mean, it's a red ale. So there's some of that in there from a memory of what red ale is, because I've only had so many of them in my life. But I think it is very good. I think it is a proper special beer. Like, it's just not the type of thing you're going to find on the shelf anywhere else, potentially at any other time. So in that sense, in my mind, this is a perfect annual release. Like, very well worth having. Ethan asked me before the pod, basically, is it better or worse than Dragon's Milk? Or is it worth being double the price of Dragon's Milk? Because it's not cheap. And the reason I told him yes and no, and the reason I'd repeat that answer now, is because it's worth doing it. It's worth doing it once or twice because it's an annual release. And it's that good.
For a special occasion.
Yes.
It's like your fine scotch type of thing.
Oh, yeah. Would I do it consistently? No. I would. Dragon's Milk is plenty fine. And for the price point, absolutely. So this is, but this is special. That's how I would just describe it as special in a word. Special, unique, kind of an orange flavored red ale. That's heavy ABV and real solid.
Very good.
I am impressed. And I may keep that box, because that box is a very nice box. Fine presentation, I say.
Yeah, you can keep stuff in there.
Yeah. Like the can or dice, if I was that big of a D&D nerd.
I mean, what you could do is once the can is empty, you can take the can, cut the bottom out of it, and poke holes in it in a pattern, and then make a light out of it.
Ooh.
Because it's a nice looking can, I'll give it that.
Yeah, it's simple and it knows what it's doing. So, I like it.
Yeah.
Bitter orange liquor barrels.
So now I see the fly on the label, and now all I can think of is, there was a little fly, and he flew into a store, and he upon the ceiling, and he upon the floor, he upon the bacon, and he upon the ham, and he upon the head of the little grocery man.
Where's that from?
That is just some old silly song that I heard Seamus Kennedy sing. It's in one of his bar performance albums.
Okay.
It's really good because it's sort of like The Cat Came Back. So in The Cat Came Back, there's this kid that has a cat that he just keeps trying to get rid of, but the cat came back, and he winds up like ramping it up, like he shoves the cat into a cannon and fires it off as far as he possibly can, but it came back the very next day. The little fly is the same kind of thing. It's this little grocery man and his little grocery wife trying to deal with this fly, and they ultimately just get a hand grenade and throw it at the fly. But it winds up killing them. And they go to heaven and get their wings, and then they came back down to earth and they upon the fly. And they just go. It's just one of those silly and absurd things. Maybe we'll do an episode on why I really like that type of thing.
We should.
Because my other favorite song of his is called Monkey Farts.
It's funny. If that's an old tune, it's fitting, because it's perfectly the humor of our generation.
Yeah.
Where we laugh at absurd things all the time. But it's also beautifully simple and absurd, which means it is the humor of the generations prior.
Yes.
Maybe not of our parents, maybe of our parents, but of our grandparents, like, for sure.
Yeah, it's not like where I see memes going. Like, I remember memes when I was a kid were like short and to the point. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they weren't so great, and a lot of times they were pretty good. But now I see memes, and for one thing, I can't tell which ones are AI generated and which ones aren't anymore.
Oh, sure.
Not because of how good AI is getting, but because of how bad some people are at humor. And I just see it, and I'm like, this is just weird. Like, this is just getting to the point where it is too much. Mm-hmm. Too much absurdity that it's not funny. Like, the best way to do absurdism, which I don't care for the concept of absurdism as a whole, but the absurdist style of comedy is to take it completely serious and be totally deadpan. Like, it was advice that Leslie Nielsen was talking about in an interview where basically he said, you have to do something funny and not let the audience know that you're being funny.
Yeah.
And to demonstrate this, he just very casually crosses his legs and farts very loudly in front of the entire audience, maintaining eye contact with Conan O'Brien, who, like, almost fell out of his chair at that point.
Well, it's fitting, right? Yeah.
And Monty Python was great at that, too. Like, if you just look at one of their old sketches, like the Ministry of Silly Walks, they're acting like they're taking it completely seriously. But it's just stupid. It's just dumb and absurd, and we love it, and it's hilarious. Like self-defense against fresh fruit. Everybody is completely deadpan.
We need that, though.
And it ramps up the absurd, but it's one absurd thing at a time, and increasing magnitude. It isn't this, I'm just going to throw as much absurdity into your face as possible and expect you to laugh at it. Is that they know when to deliver it. Like, and now. And now. And now.
So I wonder how much of that comes from living a hard life, like realizing that everything sucks around you in a sense, or at least can, and then just deciding to kind of just own that.
Well, Lenny Bruce said that comedy plus tragedy equals, or comedy is tragedy plus time.
Yeah.
So when you can learn to laugh at the bad things that happened to you back then, then you're a comedian.
Or when you can just express them in a funny but completely deadpan type of way.
Yeah.
And the reason I say this is because this is how I act at work half the time. Like, you just described my sense of humor at work. So, not that I'm going to do stand-up comedy anytime soon, but...
Oh, right.
Yeah. IT guy, you fixed thousands of issues, for people, you've kind of seen it all. Yeah, because you've seen it all, you can kind of say whatever you want, and you end up getting a bunch of people to laugh.
Or, like I did at my previous job, you have the reputation of being the guy that never says anything inappropriate most of the time, never, like usually takes himself and his job pretty seriously, and then I'll say something, and then I have a couple of my coworkers doubled over laughing because they were like, it's not that what you said was funny, it was funny. It's the fact that you said it and nobody expected it to come from you. Which is part of what deadpan comedy is. Yeah.
It's the brilliant honesty of it.
Or another moment when, so at my previous job, the warehouse guys had 5 forklifts. 3 of them were omnidirectional, or they're called four-way, so they can go forward and backward, and then the wheels turn and they can go side to side. And then they had 2 regular type of forklifts. Well, the four-ways were battery-powered and old and weren't maintained well. Nothing was maintained well. But the four-ways were particularly bad. So for a while, they would just, especially in the wintertime, they would just die. And the solution was to get one of the bigger forklifts to come and sort of guide it over to the charging station. But there still has to be a man guiding the four-way, operating the wheel on the four-way so it can be guided properly into the charging station. And I'm seeing this happen, and I see one forklift helping to carry another forklift over the charging station, and it's already a humorous image. I can see you grinning. It's like, this is already a humorous spectacle.
Yep.
And then my coworker comes up behind me and gets like that far away from my ear on this side and goes, and now we see how the father forklift carries the baby forklift over to the feeding pens. He does this so that the baby forklift will learn where the food is and will remember for the next time. I laughed so hard I turned purple.
And he didn't have that planned ahead of time.
No, he didn't. He just came right up and said it.
Yeah.
A little while later, after I was through laughing, he goes, yeah, I saw you looking at it, and I thought it was funny, too, and I just thought I'd share that with you. Like, I laughed so hard, I had to, like, stumble into the room where our machine was that we operated, and just like sit down and take a minute, because I was just like, that is probably one of the best instances of one-line comedy that I have ever actually experienced.
Oh, it's more than one line.
In real life. Like, that was just...
That is brilliant. That is truly brilliant. And coming from me, by the way, this is like some of the highest compliments I'll ever give comedy. This is me reacting the way I am right now. That is amazing.
Yeah, apparently, every now and again, somebody would just say something, and I'd either get an image in my head that just made me giggle, or it would just tickle the right spot of my brain, that I would start laughing, and I wouldn't be able to stop myself. To the point where people are like, Ethan, breathe, you're turning purple. And then their reaction is making me laugh even harder.
But anyway, we have poetry to discuss, as we said last week.
Yes, going from comedy to poetry.
Yes.
But it's all art.
Sometimes there's no difference. But talked about the beauty of poetry last week, why you should care, why I, an ordinary man, should care, and why all of the people like me should care. The beauty of it, its mode of expression, its mode of performance, and plenty of other things you can find out by going and watching the last episode if you haven't. So go and do your homework, do your business there, and then come back to this. Or skip it. You're not getting any grades from us. But we have some poems to discuss. And I don't think I've said it enough, but we're shills for Lord of the Rings. So we're just going to pick stuff from Lord of the Rings. And I've got two. You've got two, Ethan. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'm okay to start wherever. I can start if you want, or you can start if you have that itch.
I think we'll have you start with it. So,
all right. First poem.
We'll save the best for first.
The first poem that I have brought with me comes from the Fellowship of the Ring, and it is in my very nice... This is like the nicest cheap edition of The Lord of the Rings I've ever found. This is just an aside. The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit in a mini box set. It's all bound in this really nice faux leather. I wish it was real leather, but I don't want to spend $700 on books. So no. Faux leather will work fine for my purposes. And they're really nice. They're basically pocket-sized. You can fit them in the pocket of a coat. And it makes me really happy. Now, the trade-off of that is that, especially with as thin as they are, the writing is very small. So, if you need your readers, wear them, or you're going to be playing the trombone a little bit, trying to figure out where the right spot is. And be prepared for slightest bit of eye strain. But it's worth it, because, again, it's the Lord of the Rings, and how can you not love this? This is a physical representation of beautiful simplicity. It needs no more. Get a
slight bit of eye strain, you'll hurt your eyes. If you keep getting slight bits of eye strain, you'll really hurt your eyes, and then you won't be able to do as many things in the world, and then you'll be forced to sit in a chair and read more Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. So this only turns out good for everybody.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
So the first poem will be the Lay of Beren and Luthien, which is a song. I'm not going to sing the song as performed by Clamavi de Profundis. There will be a link in the description. We are not affiliated with them, though we wish we were. Mm-hmm. But they are fantastic. You should go check them out immediately. The Lay of Beren and Luthien. The context for this, or maybe the whole story, we can get from Dominic because he knows it better. The sad thing, the thing that's sad about this is that it never mentions the dog. But
Juan.
But the song is about the love of Beren and Luthien.
The entire song is all I will say is that there is a tragic and yet beautiful happy ever after type of ending to them. And I will let your imagination begin to work for you as Ethan reads this poem.
The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock on most tall and fair, and in the glade a light was seen, of stars and shadow shimmering. Tinuviel was dancing there, to music of a pipe unseen, and light of stars was in her hair, and in her raiment glimmering. There Beren came from mountains cold, and lost he wandered under leaves, and where the elven river rolled, he walked alone and sorrowing. He peered between the hemlock leaves, and saw in wonder flowers of gold upon her mantle and her sleeves, and her hair like shadow following. Enchantment healed his weary feet that over hills were doomed to roam, and forth he hastened strong and fleet, and grasped at moonbeams glistening. Through woven woods in elven home she lightly fled on dancing feet, and left him lonely still to roam in the silent forest, listening. He heard there oft the flying sound of feet as light as linden leaves, or music welling underground in hidden hollows quavering. Now withered lay the hemlock sheaves, and one by one with sighing sound, whispering fell the beechen leaves, in the wintry woodland wavering. He sought her ever, wandering far, where leaves of years were thickly strewn, by light of moon and ray of star, in frosty heaven shivering. Her mantle glinted in the moon, as on a hilltop high and far, she danced, and as her feet was strewn, a mist of silver quivering. When winter passed she came again, and her song released the sudden spring, like rising lark and falling rain, and melting water bubbling. He saw the elven flowers spring about her feet, and healed again. He longed by her to dance and sing upon the grass untroubling. Again she fled, but swift he came. To Nuviel, he called her by her elvish name. And there she halted listening. One moment stood she, and a spell his voice laid on her Beren came, and doom fell on Nuviel, that in his arms lay glistening. As Beren looked into her eyes, within the shadows of her hair, the trembling starlight of the skies he saw there mirrored shimmering. Nuviel the elven fair, immortal maiden elven wise, about him cast her shadowy hair, and her arms like silver glistening. Long was the way that fate them bore, o'er stony mountains cold and grey, through halls of iron and darkening door, and woods of nightshade morrowless. The sundering seas between them lay, and yet at last they met once more. And long ago they passed away in the forest, singing sorrowless. So we do see there a tragic and yet beautiful ending. And there was, I forget what the name of the Greek myth is that Tolkien was actually drawing upon when he wrote the tale of Beren and Luthien.
I wouldn't know.
But there is this old Greek myth of an elderly couple. They've been married for quite some time. And the gods come in human form disguised. And each of them puts this couple through a different test. I think at one point Aphrodite comes and tries to tempt the husband, and he rejects her. Somebody else, I think Zeus comes, tries to tempt the wife. She rejects him. Apollo comes, and they offer him hospitality. He dressed as a beggar. They offer him hospitality. And then the couple die. And they go to the gods. And this is not normally how death works in Greek mythology. But these people are particular, and they are special. And Zeus sits before them, and he says, "You have exemplified perfect virtue. What is it that you desire of us? We will grant you a reward, even something so great as a place among our midst. We will help you become gods ourselves." And the couple reply, "All we want is to spend eternity together." And they are granted that. They are granted their own home in Elysium, so that they can spend their eternity together for their love for one another. And Tolkien was drawing on that when he wrote the story of Beren and Luthien, which he condensed in the song.
Yeah.
Because that's how Tolkien did a lot. Most of the lore in the Silmarillion is referenced in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but it's done so in song. So Tolkien writes the lore, and then he writes a song about it. Because apparently just writing the lore, straight exposition is not good enough for Tolkien. It has to be in song. But that is how most people have preserved their people's lore for the longest time.
Yeah.
Has been in song and fairy stories.
Well, it's the most fitting. I mean, look at the Field of Cormorant. Right after the ring is destroyed, more or less, I shall sing the lay of Frodo of the Nine Fingers in the Ring of Doom. Because y'all need a song to...
Yeah, we need a song about this now. Yeah.
It's memorable. It's performative. It does, without doing justice to the acts that it references, it does justice to them.
Yeah. And if I was to just recite this, I find it much easier to memorize something when it is put to music.
Mm-hmm. So go listen to that song in the description.
Yes, go listen to the song in the description and then memorize it because it's fantastic. I remember when I was a wee pup and I was learning poetry in school and I was reciting poetry, learning to memorize it and everything. I figured out that if I spoke the poetry rhythmically and almost sang it, I memorized it much better. Which basically led into me being a 10-year-old rapping "Oh Captain, My Captain." But it's the nature of poetry. And the nature of song. Mm-hmm. Because when you turn poetry into song, then it actually adds that rhythmic and that musical element. You also have a melody to remember, which is not the same kind of thing as remembering the lyrics. Or just remembering words by themselves.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
I'm sorry if you can hear that. My daughter has a sore throat, and she's woken up twice now, terrified of something.
Aww.
Probably having bad dreams, and she's not feeling well. And my wife is in there helping her out.
I think that is part of family living, and I think that is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And if you, the listener, have a problem with that, just screw off, unsubscribe if you're subscribed. We don't need you.
Yeah, but I don't want your subscription if you're annoyed by hearing my daughter cry in the background.
Mm-hmm. So, that's just what I say.
Family that isn't crying is dying. But I want to look at a few other, a couple of other things in this poem. So just the way that this works as a story poem, and had I had the opportunity the year I was teaching, I was actually going to use this to teach my students a thing or two about poetry. But Tolkien gives us really good illustration of setting. So in the first line, he says, "The leaves were long, the grass was green, the hemlock umbels tall and fair." So what time of year is that? That's summer.
Summer. No.
Right. It's not spring. If it was spring, the leaves would be new. And the hemlock umbels would be short and dull. But this is summertime. And Tinuviel is just dancing. She's dancing in a glade because she's an elf maiden and she's just very happy to be alive.
Mm-hmm. The cynic in you would say, what else would you do when you're immortal? And the simpleton, the good simpleton in you would say, what better thing is there to do when you're immortal? So.
Exactly. And then Beren comes along and he's lost. It says he came from mountains cold, so he's probably not in a great mood.
I can interject and add context to that. I forget the name of the mountain range, but he's come from the north. His tribe was basically one that was resisting Morgoth. Mm-hmm. They were doing guerrilla warfare, basically, and one of their own betrayed them. Mm. And Beren essentially escapes, gets out of there. And he passes through, it might be the mountains of Gorgoroth, not the Gorgoroth of Mordor. I forget the name. Basically, they're the Mountains of Terror. He passes through the area where Ungoliant's children are just about and have the nest to themselves.
Oh boy.
Like, it puts Cirith Ungol to shame. in terms of the amount of horror of that place.
Shelob's brood that you see, but every spider is the size of Shelob.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a truly gosh darn horrifying place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he comes through that. And then he comes into the woods of Doriath. And the king and queen of Doriath are Thingol and Melian. And Melian is a Maiar.
And Thingol is an elf.
Yeah. And she has woven basically a protection spell around the place so that nobody may find their way in. But she does prophesy, I think she prophesies that like somebody's going to make it through. So Beren...
Here's the trick. Beren wasn't trying to find his way in. He was lost. He was trying to get out.
He was wandering. And he was... Well, how would you be if you came through that place and lived and survived? As a man of great strength and honor. But still.
And you're the only one.
Yeah.
You're the only one left of your tribe.
You're the only one left. Horror, grief, a weariness of ages and ages.
Like, imagine being the last Spartan left alive at Thermopylae.
Yeah, and imagine passing through untold horrors after that, and then coming upon some sort of oasis. But just imagine your mode of being before you get to the oasis.
Yeah.
You're just stumbling about, and yeah, my goodness.
And then you come across this glade, which is basically a woodland clearing, where there's no trees, there's only grass and flowers. And the most beautiful woman in the world is dancing. Just dancing. Like Julie Andrews' Sound of Music. Dancing in a field of flowers. If any women are watching this, let us know if you've ever had an urge to dance in a field of flowers. And if you haven't, and you're having trouble finding men, go try it.
It's worth trying. It's worth trying.
Frolicking. That's what Tenuviel is doing. She's frolicking. But she's not doing it, what's the word I'm looking for? She's not doing it frivolously. She's just happy to be alive. And why wouldn't you dance when the world around you is beautiful?
I mean, is that not the best form of frivolity?
That's like good frivolity. Yeah. The good equivalent of frivolity. And then you've been through exactly what Beren has been through, and you have basically seen the exact polar opposite. Why would you not be immediately entranced and completely in love? Like, imagine, I think in modern equivalents, imagine just say you're a soldier or a Marine. Your entire unit has just been killed because you were betrayed. You're the only one that manages to make it out of there. So on top of the survivor's guilt, which we know is a real thing, you have the horrors of everything that you have seen. Like, not only are you the only one left alive, you have to make it out of hostile territory by yourself. And we'll just say, for some reason, it's Australia.
Okay.
Where everything living wants to kill you.
All right.
Either Australia or someplace in the jungles of Africa, where not a single leaf is safe. I mean, when you see a giant snake swallow a water buffalo whole, that does stuff to you.
Fair.
That's kind of horrifying. Or when you see a Komodo dragon swallow a baby goat whole and you can hear it screaming from the Komodo dragon's stomach, that does stuff to you.
Yeah.
And then you come home. And you either come home or you make it to someplace that is safe. And the first thing you see in that safe place is the most beautiful woman that you've ever seen dancing gracefully. Would you not be completely in love? Dancing gracefully in such a way, basically as bad and horrible and frightening as all that was, that's how beautiful this woman is. Beautiful and graceful and kind. Would you not just be completely in love?
Absolutely.
Everybody would be. So, of course, Beren's immediate reaction is just to call out to her. But
she vanishes.
She vanishes. She lightly fled on dancing feet. But she lightly fled on dancing feet. It's playful. So she wants the chase. She's not frightened of him. This is sort of a teasing. Because all we ever get is Beren's perspective. We don't get Luthien's perspective.
See, you've lowered my opinion of Luthien now because she's an elf, and so this is just pure cruelty.
And she's seeing a man who is probably, I don't know, he probably hasn't bathed in some time. He's probably covered in dirt and blood, and his hair's a mess. His clothes are probably torn. And he calls out to her, but she's for some reason not frightened of him. And instead she decides to just sort of playfully dance away.
I wonder if she is scared of him. It's hard to say.
It says she lightly fled on dancing feet. She was dancing.
But he didn't call out to her. So it's possible that she didn't see him, and that it was more of a vision than anything else.
It says, enchantment healed his weary feet that over hills were doomed to roam, and forth he hastened strong and fleet, and grasped at moonbeams glistening. So he didn't call out to her, he just, charged her.
The idea of her being a vision who doesn't notice him fits with the later part of the poem.
He's reaching out to something.
I'm not saying you're wrong either.
She is a living vision. He reaches out for something, because when all you have seen is horror, you will reach out to beauty.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And he heard thereof the flying sound of feet as light as linden leaves, music welling underground and hidden hollows quavering. So he comes back because he wants to see her again. And she's echoing.
Yeah.
He knows that she has been there.
Yeah,
whether this is a literal, elven magic echo, or this is the song of a heart. Because he is completely in love with this woman. He doesn't know her name. He has never spoken to her. He has only ever seen her. But he is in love. Because he has seen her dance. So whether this is some elven magic that is keeping her voice in the wood, or whether the song is in his heart, and every time he comes to that glade, he is remembering what it was like to hear her bare feet pat her on the ground while she danced.
Well, it's heard there off the flying sound, a fleet as light as linden leaves, and a music welling underground, in hollows wavering. He is hearing it in everything around him.
Yeah, and he cannot get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then at the winter time, he goes looking for her. She's not here, where is she?
Yeah, because, by the way, it's now winter.
Yeah. Went from summer to winter. Through the entire autumn, he is coming to this place, and months he is coming to this place and waiting for her, just hoping and praying that she will show up again. He sought her ever wandering far, where leaves of years were thickly strewn, by light of moon and ray of star and frosty heavens shimmering. So, he's looking everywhere that he thinks she could possibly be. Then when winter passed, she came again, and her song released the sudden spring. She is so full of life, and light, and love, and laughter, and joy, that she makes the flowers bloom. Gentlemen, find a woman whose smile can make the flowers bloom. I remember when I was at school, you have to be poetic about these things, because I remember when I was in college, and our university had a beautiful view across the Missouri River. Gorgeous sunsets every night. There was one night the sunset was particularly good. And Homer in the Odyssey frequently remembers dawn with her rose-red fingers. And as I was walking, I'm looking at the sunset. And I'm brought to... What is brought to mind is Homer's vision of dawn with her rose-red fingers, which if you've seen the right conditions for dawn, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what that means, the rose-red fingers of dawn. And as the sun is setting, the sky is alight, vibrant orange and yellow and red, like fire. And in my mind, the first thing I can think of is, if dawn has rosy fingers, then dusk has fiery heels. And then my heart responded and said, the woman that you find will have eyes as soft as the rosy fingers of dawn, and a smile more radiant than the fiery heels of dusk.
The soft welcome and...
the softness of dawn and the radiance of dusk.
And the fiery joy.
And I did. My wife has eyes as soft as the rosy fingers of dawn, and a smile as brilliant as the fiery heels of dusk.
That's amazing.
Find the woman that you can write poetry about. Or find the woman who fits the poetry in your heart. For Beren, the shadows of her hair and the trembling starlight of the skies, he saw their mirrored shimmering. Shadowy hair and arms like silver.
I mean, that's the best form of cuddling that will ever be.
I mean, yeah,
right there. That entire stanza. As Beren looked into her eyes within the shadows of her hair,
I also like the
trembling starlight of the skies, he saw their mirrored shimmering. To Nuviel, the fair and mortal maiden elven-wise, about him cast her shadowy hair, and arms like silver glimmering. Men, do this with your wives, don't do it with them beforehand.
I don't think that's where it's going. I don't think that's what he meant. I think he's talking about a literal embrace.
I'm just aware of the fact that I'm on YouTube and there's a bunch of schmucks that are out there. That's all.
Point. This is the internet. But this is also what I want to see when Winter Past she came again. So once she returns, so it takes until the springtime for her to return to that same glade. He longed by her to dance and sing upon the grass untroubling. I don't care if you dance or not. You will want to dance with your wife.
Yeah.
You will want to dance with her. Do you know why? Because she will complete you. I know that's a corny thing to say, but you know what? Corn will never die.
Nope. Cliches are cliches because they're true.
You want to dance with her because it is... I can't even express it in words. You just want to dance with her. And the urge may just come upon you. The trope that we see in television is that it's always from the woman. It's like, come on, let's dance. And then the husband's like, oh, no, I don't want to. That's wrong. You will want to dance. And you will love every second of dancing with her and looking into her eyes. But there's a stanza here that I do want to talk about specifically. Again she fled, but swift he came. So he goes to her again. By the way, she knows that he's been looking for her. Because women know these things. They have ways of knowing these things. This is flirtatious. Her fleeing from him is meant to be flirtatious. I recently saw a clip from a podcast. I don't remember what podcast it was. But of a man pointing out something that I had forgotten about. That a man is supposed to chase a woman. But she is supposed to let him know that she wants to be chased. She is supposed to tease him. There was an old tradition, this goes back well over a century, where a woman would, to flirt with a man, she would drop her handkerchief in front of him. Or she'd drop her gloves. She would drop something of hers in front of him. Because it is the courteous and the chivalric thing to do, to pick it up and give it back to her. Maybe brush it off a little bit if it's gotten a little bit dirty. Pick it up and give it back. And it got to the point where this is... There is an Abbott and Costello bit where Lou is just walking down the street. And he's at a co-ed college, a women's college, where they're not permitted to date or flirt with men. And like 3 women just like drop their handkerchiefs in front of him in a row. And he, not even thinking, just like bends down and goes to pick it up. Not even reciprocating the flirting, but just because he's a nice guy. And some like security guard or policeman comes over and beats him with a club every time he does. But that's the way it used to be, is that a woman actually told the man that she wanted to be pursued. That women want to be pursued and men want to pursue. So ladies, if you're having a hard time with the guy you like, if he's not picking up on your hints, quit hinting and tell him.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make it a lot more obvious. Because we're also men of a generation that have been told that if you look at a woman cross-eyed, you'll probably go to jail.
It turns out that flirting can go both ways and should go both ways.
Yes.
It turns out that initial pursuit should go both ways.
Yes.
You know?
But basically, the dropping of the handkerchief or of the gloves or of the handbag or whatever is, I want you to pursue me. I'm dropping it very obviously, deliberately in front of you. Because I want you to pick it up and give it to me so I have a reason to talk to you. Because back then it wasn't you just walk up to a woman and start talking to her. That's brash. And actually very impolite. Because for the longest time, a proper introduction is for a mutual friend to introduce you to each other. It used to be, hey, Phil, this is my friend Esther. Esther, this is my friend Phil. You two kids get to know each other. I'm going to go over here.
Or the handkerchief.
And then at about, 6 weeks, Phil and Esther are married. And they somehow have 12 kids in 5 days. Nobody knows how that worked.
Fair enough.
But I wanted to also point out that the last 2 lines of the stanza are, and doom fell onto Nuviel, that in his arms lay glimmering. If you are somebody that hears that and then goes, date, I want you away from my podcast. But actually, first, I want you to stay and listen to me.
Yeah, I have the nerdy explanation, but I'm going to hear
my
yours
wife
first.
just did this off to the side. She's going to keep her mouth shut. I understand where you might be, why you might think that. If we're talking about literal doom, there's a lot of lore behind that, for one thing. Of doom falling onto Nuviel. For one thing, she's an elf, she's immortal. He's a man, he's not. So for her to choose him means for her to choose mortality. That is doom. But also just in sort of a poetic sense, there is something of a pleasant doom that befalls a woman when she falls in love with a man. Would you say that, dear? My wife is nodding, so she is a representative of all women, and no woman can ever argue with her.
Okay.
But there's a kind of pleasant doom that befalls a woman. Because there is a sort of pain and a sort of suffering that comes with loving a man that you're not married to. Am I right again? Because you aren't sure if he'll stay or if he'll leave. Yeah. The end goal is the scariest part.
The scariest part in what sense?
Because you don't know. You don't know what the end is going to be. Now, I was very upfront with her when we started dating. I said this will end one of 2 ways. We will either break up or we will get married. And that will happen rather quickly. Now, we were dating for 6 months. Yeah, for 6 months. And we got engaged. 6. Our first official date was Valentine's Day, and we got engaged on August 14th. Which is the eve of the...
Feast of the Assumption.
Feast of the Assumption. Thank you. I'm earning husband points right now because I just remembered the dates the dates of our first date and when we were engaged. But anyway, I digress. Doom fell onto Nuviel that in his arms lay glistening. It's over for her. No more independence. Especially when you know the story of what happens to Beren and Luthien. Which is tragic but beautiful at the very end at the same time, because that is the only story in the Silmarillion that has an actual positive ending.
It's tragic but beautiful, just go read the summary.
It's like tragic and then it's good.
I only
Everything else is okay and good, and then it's tragic.
I only have certain comments after you finish. They don't include a full recounting of that tale, so just folks go read the Silmarillion.
Yeah, basically the entire tale of Beren and Luthien. So Tolkien has here extended the first paragraph of the tale in the Silmarillion into however many stanzas that is.
And the rest is hinted at.
8 stanzas, and then the rest of the story is hinted at in the very last stanza.
Mm-hmm.
Because what he's talking about here, because the context for this is that Aragorn has said that he will tell the tale of Tenuviel, in brief. So there's also like an implication here that Aragorn just came up with this song as an abbreviated version of the full tale.
The last stanza, yeah, maybe.
Because the hobbits have been begging him to tell them stories from the old days. And he thinks of Beren and Luthien, the tale of Tenuvio. And this is mentioned in the films briefly in the extended versions. Frodo comes up to Aragorn and asks him what he's singing because he's singing something in Elvish. And it's this tale. The implication is because he's thinking of Arwen. That's also a perfectly reasonable thing to do because he's a man in love with an elf. In love with an elf maid who, in his opinion, is his Luthien. And by the way, on Tolkien's headstone, it says Beren. And on his wife's, it says Luthien. If that tells you anything about what the professor thought of his wife. His wife, he thought of as the immortal maiden Elvenwise.
That is how all men ought to think of their wives.
How we ought to think of our wives, yes. Remember, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and laid down his life for her. Nothing in there Tolkien would ever disagree with.
Oh, no.
But now go listen to the song because Clamavi de Profundis takes that and then adds the musical element to it and so accurately reflects the tone of the stanzas, which changes throughout the poem with the tone of the music in the background. And it's just...
It's amazing.
It's fantastic. At some point, there needs to be a live performance, whether it's actually Clamavi de Profundis performing it. I know they don't like to show their faces because it's the private family type stuff, I understand. But we have a professional group that does that with the music backed by an actual orchestra. That's now a goal of mine to see. I'll just put it out there, of Clamavi de Profundis music being performed by professionals, which they are professionals, but so by them or by other professionals with a full orchestra playing the score. Yeah,
to any orchestra people listening, there is a market for it.
Because I know they have to do they have to use like computer generated sounds and music for their stuff. That's totally fine and reasonable.
Because not necessarily, you could do all
unless they all play unless they play the instruments themselves. Also possible.
Yeah, they might use a mixer, but I mean, an orchestra could do it in full.
If they're a homeschool family, they almost certainly do.
But no, do a orchestra, set aside an hour and a half, do a bunch of Clamavi de Profundis songs. Beren and Luthien goes right in the middle. The coronation of Aragorn goes second to last. Bilbo's last song goes last. Fill the rest of it. There's plenty of content there.
Well, you could end it with a lot of things. With I sit beside the fire and think would be...
It's a different type of ending, but yes, a really valid ending.
Way to end it. The Last Goodbye would be another really good way to end it.
Not as good as Bilbo's last song.
Not as good as Bilbo's last song, but it is.
They're both.
Ending an Irish music performance with the parting glass.
There was a lot of good endings to pick from. But
yeah, there's a bunch of ways. Somebody make that happen.
Somebody should.
Somebody with Celtic Woman's budget make that happen.
Yes.
Because that's what I'm visioning. Because that's one of the things that group is very good at, is a visual performance. Anyway, you have a poem. We have spent like an hour talking about mine.
Yeah, I know. I will only briefly add comments to Beren and Luthien, which is to reiterate some of what Ethan's saying about what Doom is. Doom equals fate in the Lord of the Rings universe. It just equals fate. And that doesn't mean bad. That just means fate. Whatever your destiny is, right? So pronouncing your doom. Even Aragorn uses this in the Return of the King with regards to Baragond, for all of you book nerds. You know, you did this, but you also did this, therefore I must pronounce your doom, your judgment, your fate. And it turns out that the fate is pretty good. The doom of men is also known as the gift of men, and the gift of men is the fact that they die, which actually is not bad in the Lord of the Rings universe.
And that's a good thing for them. For us, it's a punishment for sin.
Yeah.
But for them, it's a good thing.
Yeah, for them it is a mysterious good gift, and they have a hard time accepting that, and the world is terraformed as a result. But, men being men. And yeah, the rest of the poem, the rest of the story is hinted at, although Aragorn actually in the page after this does give a really good account of more of the details. So if you want to not read the Silmarillion and just read Lord of the Rings, just read the page after this poem ends, because a lot of it is there. In fact, basically every single key detail is there. But this is doom, right? And they both die. Well, in a sense, they die. Beren dies. Luthien, I forget exactly how that works.
She goes to the Undying Lands or something.
She might die of sorrow. And then go to the Undying Lands. It's interesting. Just go read. And yet at last they met once more. And long ago they passed away in the forest singing sorrowless.
Singing sorrowless.
Sorrowless. So this is a happy ever after ending.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll spoil this for people, when she first falls in love with Beren, she doesn't lose her mortality. She loses her mortality as part of a deal to get him back from death itself. Because he's dead. He is properly dead.
Yeah, it's something that an elf can choose.
Well, she was given the choice.
And she was given at under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
For context, like Elrond's brother also took the same choice.
All of Beren and Luthien's descendants basically got that choice. Was how it works.
Oh, that's right. Elrond is one of her descendants, isn't
yeah.
he?
So
that's right.
If you're not one of her descendants, you don't get the choice. But it was part of this. It was part of this deal.
Just as a mild spoiler alert, that is why Elrond's last name is half Elven.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is the son of Beren and Luthien. Anyway.
Yep. Fun fact: Elrond's brother, this dates him a bit, is the first king of Numenor.
Oh, that makes sense. He chose to be a man instead of an elf. Yeah.
Yeah. So Aragorn is actually, in marrying Arwen, is getting married to,
like, his cousin.
But umpteen generations removed.
Yeah.
So it's still fine. Okay.
Totally normal. Totally normal.
Yes.
If, look at the Old Testament. Adam married his rib.
I'm going to forget you said that.
It's totally fine. And
there's rules about this. It is within the rules. How about
logically speaking, Seth probably married his sister. No, anyway, totally understandable. Basically, Aragorn and Arwen are far enough removed.
There's also a lot of metaphorical ways to read Genesis. So, but anyway, yeah, everything I could say about that, every reaction I had from that, you covered, and you covered very well. So I have nothing else to add. So we're going to pivot to something we're going to spend less time on because it's not worth spending the same amount of time on, which is the Lament for Gandalf. Now, the movies don't have this, for those of you that just watched the movies. The movies have a lament for Gandalf, which is going on in the background as they're all chilling on Lothlorien, and Legolas is walking around and he's absorbing it, and the members of the Fellowship, some of them, I forget which,
it's the hobbits,
basically,
I think.
What are they singing? And he's like, I don't have the heart to tell you. The grief for me is still too real.
So what they are singing at that point is actually what Faramir says in Lament for Boromir.
No, it's a lament correct. It's a lament for Gandalf.
Is it? Because I thought the translation for that was that I value not the arrow for its swiftness, nor the blade for its sharpness. I honor the warrior for his courage, or something along those lines, which I thought was something that Faramir said about Boromir upon finding his horn.
That might be something you said about Boromir, but that's not what their elves are singing about Gandalf.
Okay.
All that they know is that nearby elvish voices are singing, and there are many sweet and sad words, and in the midst of it they'll hear Mithrandir, Mithrandir, or O Pilgrim Grey. So they know it's about Gandalf, but they don't know what is being sung. And they're all sorrowing for him, right? And sorrow is proper to put into words. So as Tolkien says, it was Frodo who first put something of his sorrow into halting words. He was seldom moved to make song or rhyme. Even in Rivendell he had listened and not sung himself, but etc. This just comes. Now he sings. When evening in the Shire was grey, his footsteps on the hill were heard. Before the dawn he went away, on journey long without a word. From wilderland to western shore, from northern waste to southern hill, through dragon lair and hidden door, and darkling woods he walked at will. With dwarf and hobbit, elves and men, with mortal and immortal folk, with bird on bow and beast in den, in their own secret tongues he spoke. A deadly sword, a healing hand, a back that bent beneath its load, a trumpet voice, a burning brand, a weary pilgrim on the road. A lord of wisdom throned he sat, swift in anger, quick to laugh. An old man in a battered hat, who leaned upon a thorny staff. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken upon the stone. In Khazad-dûm his wisdom died. So this is told from the perspective of a hobbit.
And how the hobbit remembers Gandalf.
How the hobbit remembers Gandalf. Because the initial scope of how they describe Gandalf is how any hobbit would have. He showed up in the evening. He was quiet. And he left before the dawn, without a word. He was humble. And even their scope of his wanderings, like they know that he dealt with Dragon Lair and Hidden Door. They know that he dealt with Darkling Wood and passed them through. But their scope is that he moved from Wilderland, which is effectively like Bree, to Western Shore. You know? And there's a purpose behind that, I think. Or at least there's something to be learned from it. Like, oh, he went all over the world. He went over our world. Beyond that, too. We know that. But he was one of us. He was not long among us. And yet we respected him. And yet we loved him. He was silent, but he was wise. He had charisma. He had courage. He clearly had power within him. And we didn't necessarily process that. He was the guy that showed up and did fireworks, but like he had power within him. Some part of us might recognize that. And yet he had hands of healing. But did that make him some great king to us? No, his back bent beneath his load. You know, that stanza, a trumpet voice, power, a burning brand, power and courage, a weary pilgrim on the road, one of us. Gandalf is being described as the epitome of the extraordinary within the ordinary. And not because he's this fake character that Tolkien invented to represent that. Simply because that's who he was. Because there was a sense of the ordinary about him, even if he is a Mire. And there is a sense in which we can all be that too, right? Like what is ultimately being presented is something that's accessible. It's something that we all kind of feel within all of us, that we might all aspire to be. A trumpet voice, a burning brand. How many of us would cry out against injustice and such? But under what form? As what type of person? A weary pilgrim on the road. How many of us would like the courage to have a deadly sword when self-defense calls for it, when the defense of our family calls for it, and yet have healing hand for all that need it, friend or foe? But that's described afterwards as just a back that bent beneath its load.
You want to know why your grandpa's hunched over? It's because he carried your family for his entire life.
The nobility of that, though. You know? The beauty of that.
Now, what Frodo has described, what Frodo sings, while it is the perspective of a hobbit, it is of a hobbit who knows him particularly well. And of a hobbit who is particularly close to him, especially along the journey that they've just taken. That led to Moria.
Even then, though, only so well.
So, I would like to read the verse that Sam added.
Yes, that's fair. Go for it.
Because Sam it really is the epitome of the ordinary man. And what Sam is bringing is the overall remembrance of the Shire. Because if you recall, you know this even in the films, Gandalf was the old man who brought fireworks. Mm-hmm.
Time the Hobbit soon.
The finest rockets ever seen. They burst in stars of blue and green. Or after thunder, golden showers came falling like a rain of flowers. So if a hobbit remembers nothing else of Gandalf, he remembers the most beautiful fireworks display in the world, which unbeknownst to him was powered by wizard magic. How many people in the Shire actually knew of Gandalf as the wizard?
Well, I think they did, but they had no idea what a wizard really was.
And how many of them just thought of Gandalf the Grey and his fantastic show of fireworks? Who other than Bilbo really knew what Gandalf could do?
Yeah.
But Gandalf came to see his very good friend, possibly his best friend, I would say, Gandalf and Bilbo, because he doesn't exhibit a closeness or a fellowship with anybody in the Lord of the Rings trilogy like he does with Bilbo. Like with Frodo, it's sort of an uncle-like protectiveness and a wisdom of a teacher. That's not something that he shares with Bilbo. As with Bilbo in The Hobbit, they were side by side. And yes, while Gandalf is a Maya, obviously they are leagues apart as far as their station in the universe. Gandalf is a literal angel. Mm-hmm. And Bilbo is the smallest of creatures. The way that Bilbo and Gandalf interact is as old friends do. Whereas with Frodo and the other hobbits is as somebody that they look up to. Gandalf and Bilbo almost interact as though they're equals. Almost as though they're brothers.
That's a fair point.
Mostly because, that might be because my argument is that Bilbo Baggins is Tolkien's self-insert.
Could be.
He enjoys a good pipe and he writes a good book. The argument was made that was Tom Bombadil, but I think it's probably both. It's Tom Bombadil and Bilbo Baggins.
But to return to this as
the rest,
I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I meant to bring that back around. The rest of the hobbits, probably, if they remember nothing else, they remember the fireworks. Even if they don't remember the old gray man's name, they still remember the fireworks. So they still remember what he did for them.
And there was some...
Like you said, that's like the pinnacle of ordinariness.
Yeah. Yeah, ordinariness, simplicity, and that is just, that's so present in the song, as I've already said. And then to close, similar to the Song of Beren and Luthien, everything else is kind of summed up in the end. Well, in this case, it's not quite like the end of the story is summed up, although it is. But in this case, it's a grief that they're still processing. He was this guy. He was the deadly sword, the healing hand, the back that bent beneath its load. A lord of wisdom throned he sat, and he was like this, and he was an old man, and leaned upon his thorn staff. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken on the stone. In Khazad-dûm his wisdom died. And they continue to mourn, as you would. That's how you put your mourning into words. That is how you properly lament for someone. All of this, you remember who they were. You remember all the good times together. Yeah. And probably for your sake, you spend more time on the good times than the bad times, right?
Yeah. We've got
this is who he was. He was amazing.
5 stanzas of happy, and then one of sad.
And one at the end. And now we're going to figure out how to process that end. And yes, I just put on my acting chops, but it's worth it.
If you remember, like it's like this. My grandfather passed away last year. It's like this when I remember him. Yeah, it may not be anything so eloquent as this, because my grandfather's presence I remember being a constant and calm and peaceful and at ease, making me feel at ease. And hearing him tell stories about the old days. Everybody's grandpa tells stories about the old days. And then just like that, he was gone. If you're having a hard time figuring out what the word bittersweet means, that's it. Because I can very vividly see in my mind the image of my grandfather telling a story, laughing, smiling. And then I also remember getting the phone call that said he was gone. And then remembering that his last words were, "I'm done," after receiving the sacraments. What a hell of a way to go.
Exactly.
That's what Frodo is singing about Gandalf. If I was to sit down and write a poem about my grandfather, that's what it would be. Talk about his growing up on a farm, learning the value of work, raising his children the best way he knew how, and smiling through a bushy mustache with a twinkle in his eye at his grandson. Telling me stories and telling everybody stories of what the old days were like for him. And then that very last verse of the song would be the day I got the phone call. Because that's how, as you said, that's how you are to mourn. 90% happy, 10% sad. So something I heard about when, after President Kennedy was shot, he had an Irish wake. His family had an Irish wake for him. And if you don't know what an Irish wake is, that's when your very Catholic Irish family stands around, gets blind drunk, and tells stories around your casket.
Drunk. Not actually blind drunk.
Not actually blind drunk. Somebody does, but that's where they all stand around your casket and drink and tell stories and laugh. It's when the Catholics stand around and drink and tell stories and laugh, and the Protestants are very scandalized at the fact that the Catholics are standing around and drinking and telling stories and laughing. As I understand it, that was the report of President Kennedy's wake. That the Catholics stood around and drank and told stories. But that's how we remember our dead. Because, yes, while the realists may say, "Oh, well, he's dead, so that's all that matters now is that he's dead." No. What matters the most is how he formed me. Again, as you said, what matters the most is, and as the poem says, what matters the most is how he was to everybody else and how we remember him.
You know, what that makes me think of is that the person who just says, "Oh, he's dead," just can't face the darkness of life, can't face the grief of life, can't face the sadness of life, and yet that is a natural and bound-up consequence of all of the good of life. And consequence is the wrong word. It's part and parcel of it, and the good makes it worth it. And you have to live life in a way where you actually believe that. Because if you don't, what are you going to do? It turns out that my life has sucked, speaking for myself, in many, many ways. And yet it's worth it. And yet it's absolutely worth it. And the same goes for everybody else.
If I can harken back to our... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I might be going exactly where you were going. It harkens back to the Beren and Luthien thing. You know, doom, right? What does doom count for? Well, you know, it's fate, right? Okay, we get it all. It's all these things. But, so when you fall in love with somebody, whether you're the man or the woman, of course there's a fear that it's not going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that fear is borne out by the reality that previous relationships haven't worked out, so you know what that felt like and how bad that was. Speaking of somebody with multiple of those. Enough of them. And yet the love's worth it. And you could be very tempted to think, nope, it's not. I cannot face that. I cannot face that again. I cannot do that again. That freaking sucked. You know? That was just death in the heart again and again and again. Why bother? Why go through it? It's not worth it. But it is. But it is. And in that sentence, you will find the meaning of life, and not just the meaning, but the joy of life. Will it be laced with pain? Absolutely. But the joy is worth it. As my esteemed co-host said in a previous clip, which please go find on YouTube, love conquers all, without exception.
The only force on earth that has never been conquered. Love. And if I may borrow a line from John Wayne, all the gold in the United States Treasury and all the harp music in heaven can't equal what happens between a man and a woman with all that growing together. And if you don't understand that, or you don't like it, you can take your podcast business someplace else.
He did say that, verbatim.
The second part of that was all me.
Mm-hmm. You may take it under the mountains, and you may hide there and do things.
No, I was going to basically respond to what you said, but basically by saying that everybody that, hearkening back to our sort of pre-podcast conversation, or early podcast conversation about comedy, everybody that, all the realists that just say, well, he's dead, get over it, you don't have a sense of humor either. Because, as Lenny Bruce said, comedy is tragedy plus time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it turns out he was dead. And then he had to do this, and he had to do this, and that sucked, but because he was darn dead. Mm-hmm. He was darn dead, that fella was.
He was dead.
But he wasn't dead either, That guy just lived on.
Yeah, he wasn't dead. Then he just shows up again in a forest. He just showed up in the woods again one day.
Nah, he's just like,
guess what? I was dead, but now I'm not.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to haunt you for the rest of time, sonny.
So anybody that demands that you give up on happy memories has no sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
The same is true for people who never feel silly or are never embarrassed by anything. They have no sense of humor.
Like I said, if you have no sense of humor, then you can just go into a hole in the ground. And speaking of holes in the ground...
But not a hobbit hole. We'll put you in a hole, go to an unpleasant kind of hole in the ground. One with snakes and spiders and crawling things.
Yeah.
Because a hobbit hole means comfort, and you deserve none.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of holes in the ground, not that kind. We have our third poem.
Yes.
To get to.
Now this is a poem that is sung by Gimli in Moria. And when the dwarf starts singing, it's going to be a doozy. So that's the thing about the dwarves, is that they tend to come off as very gruff and dirty. They're a mining type of folk, so they're very gruff. They may be a little uncouth, a little bit crass. If anybody at the Fellowship is going to laugh first at a dirty joke, it's not Merry or Pippin, it's Gimli. He's a miner.
It's one of them, yeah.
It's almost certainly going to be Gimli. Merry and Pippin are just like juveniles. And having worked in a factory, that's the closest that I've come to working in a mine. I worked with nothing but people with the personalities of dwarves all around me. But when they say something beautiful, that's the thing about the dwarves, is that when they do poetry, when they say something beautiful, when they have song, it is astoundingly beautiful. Because the dwarves make fantastic and beautiful things. Even though they're usually covered in dirt and you can't tell the difference between the men and the women, and all of the dwarven stereotypes. So as the Fellowship is in Moria, apparently not at all taken to pause by the fact that there's skeletons everywhere, Gimli decides to sing this song to introduce them to what it's like being a dwarf. And again, there is some Silmarillion lore context for this one. Because this has been titled the Song of Durin. It's also called The World Was Young and the Mountains Green, but a lot of you will know it as the Song of Durin. The link to the Clamavi de Profundis version of this will also be in the comment. Will be in the description. Go watch that too.
Mm-hmm. And then learn to sing it.
And I will specifically request that the a cappella version, the a cappella full version, be the one that is put in the description. That's the best one.
If you say so, that's what I will do.
That's the best one. There is also a cover of the Clamavi de Profundis version done by Cole McGuinness and Jonathan Young and one other bass. That is spectacular. Go listen to that too.
Okay. For context, by the way, this isn't right when they enter Moria.
No, they've been in Moria for a while.
If you remember that scene from the movies where they enter the great city with all of the pillars and columns and the majesty of it all, right? Even though it's dark. The great city of Darrowdwelf. It is here that Gimli sings what Ethan is about to read.
The world was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen. No words were laid on stream or stone, when Durin woke and walked alone. He named the nameless hills and dells, he drank from yet untasted wells. He stooped and looked in mirror, and saw a crown of stars appear, as gems upon a silver thread above the shadows of his head. The world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days, before the fall of mighty kings in Nargothrond, and Gondolin, who now beyond the western seas have passed away. The world was fair in Durin's day. A king he was on carven throne, in many pillared halls of stone, with golden roof and silver floor, and runes of power upon the door. The light of sun and star and moon, and shining lamps of crystal hewn, undimmed by cloud and shade of night, there shone forever fair and bright. The hammer on the anvil smote, their chisel clove and graver wrote. Their forge was blade and bound was hilt, the delver mined the mason built. Their beryl, pearl, and opal pale, and metal wrought like fish's mail, buckler and corslet, axe and sword, and shining spears were laid in hoard. Unwearied then were Durin's folk, beneath the mountains music woke. The harpers harped, the minstrels sang, and at the gates the trumpets rang. The world is grey, the mountains old, the forge's fire is ashen cold. No harp is rung, no hammer falls, the darkness dwells in Durin's halls. The shadow lies upon his tomb, in Moria, in Khazad-dûm. But still the sunken stars appear in dark and windless Mirror. There lies his crown in water deep, till Durin wakes again from sleep. Again we have this, we have multiple stanzas, 5 stanzas of good. So at the beginning of the world, which for context, the race of dwarves is actually older than the race of elves.
Yes.
By quite a bit. But that's because one of the Maya, who was it?
One of the Valar.
One of the Valar. Aule.
Had decided to...
Aule got a little bit ahead of himself.
Yeah.
And decided, hey, look, Eru, I made something. And it was a dwarf. And Eru said, what have you done? What is wrong with you? How dare you create life? That is for me. And then he moves to strike the creature down, but the creature recoils in terror. And it wasn't Eru, it was Manwë.
No, it was Eru.
It was Eru? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, because I thought he brought it to his boss, who in the interest of his boss. No, he
didn't bring it.
Oh no,
he had made the dwarves and he was beginning to.
That's right.
I forget what he was beginning to do, but then Iluvatar just shows up and is like, "What did you do?"
Like, what are you doing? Like, oh crap, my boss's boss's boss. For context, those of you that know the choirs of angels, this is like a domination doing his thing, and then God just shows up. There's like 3 other choirs of angels in between in the hierarchy, and God just like appears. So Eru moves to strike the creatures down, and they recoil in terror, and Eru has pity on them. So he actually breathes upon them. And he grants his blessing upon them that, yes, while you have done the molding, these are now mine. And Alec kind of goes, oh, thank goodness. Oh. For a minute there, I thought I was going to get kicked out. And the difference between Aule and Morgoth, by the way, is that Morgoth was adding a discordant tone that was entirely him. Is because he thought he knew better. Aule is actually trying to help. When he makes the dwarves, Aule just is like, I have an idea. And then Eru shows up like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. There's a similarity but a difference. And Aule repents.
Yeah.
You know?
It's sort of like when my children decide that they're going to help. And they don't. when my daughter decides, I'm going to help Daddy mop the floors.
Oh, goodness.
So she just dumps a bucket of water over the floor. She hasn't done this, but this is exactly the kind of thing a 3-year-old would do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to help, and I'm going to mop the floors because I want to be helpful. That's basically what Ale is doing when he creates the dwarves. And Durin is the first king of these dwarves. Technically, he's the first dwarf. But one of the things that Ura does is he puts the dwarves to sleep. Because while they were created before he has intended to create in his image, before he has intended to create life, they still cannot be the first to walk the earth. So they have to wait until a little while after the elves have been created. So he puts them all to sleep. Then he creates the elves, he lets them do their thing for a little bit, and then he wakens the dwarves. And that's all there is to that, because the rest of it basically has to do with why Gimli and Legolas's friendship is so spectacular.
Yeah, go watch one of our last episodes about that.
Either the previous episode or the one before it. I think it's the one before it.
Yeah, the one before.
2 before it. One of the New Year's resolution ones. Anyway,
episode 25. Episode 25.
Go watch. So this poem is basically about Durin waking. So when Durin woke and walked alone. So he's the first of these dwarves to wake.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes and he's like Adam for the dwarves. He goes and he names the things that do not yet have names. He drank from yet untasted wells. Basically, he is this is the illustration that he is the first there. It mentions the world was fair, the mountains tall, in elder days before the fall of mighty kings in Nargothrond and Gondolin. So this is a really long time ago, because we're First Age.
Yeah, in other words, he's just glossing over basically all of the Silmarillion.
Yeah, the end of the Lord of the Rings is the beginning of the Fourth Age.
Yes.
So there's 2 whole ages in there that are now being... And the Silmarillion doesn't even begin with the beginning of the First Age. It's like the pre-First Age, and then it's the First Age. A lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. Durin is a great king. Wonderful, beautiful, shining, prosperous kingdom. And this is something of a song of longing for the dwarf people. A song of longing and memory for how great the times were when Durin was king. Sort of like how Catholics think of how great the times were when Christendom was whole. It's like, man, when Baldwin was king of Jerusalem. The similar kind of vibe.
The dwarves take it a step further. They believe, I believe, in reincarnation to an extent.
To an extent. And I think to an extent it's actually true for the dwarves.
Well, my guess is that it's not. But basically, there's Durin the First, which is the Durin of this poem, of this song. And there's Durin the Second and Durin the Third. And so, ask Aule. And Manwë.
Ask him what he intended of...
And Mandos and Iluvatar, and they might give you the answer. Maybe.
But then in the very last stanza, we have the world is gray, the mountains old, and the forge's fire is ashen cold. So basically, it's been a long time, and the heyday of the dwarves is very much long past. Erebor is for the most part at peace, except for that one battle that they're definitely going to have to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no indication that Dane is not a good king. Like, Dane Ironfoot is now king of the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
King of the dwarves under the mountain, anyway. Despite the tragedy that has befallen Balin and the dwarven expedition to Moria. But this is also something of an illustration of Moria itself, because Moria was a great city of the dwarves. The greatest city of the dwarves after Erebor. After the city under the mountain.
Yeah, it was their home. Erebor was an imitation. Kind of.
And now
nothing could beat Moria.
And now it's empty. And it's cold. And Balin lay dead. Not only is it empty and it's cold, but it is infested with goblins. And horror of horrors, at Balrog.
Durin's Bane.
Which, it's implied that the dwarves found. because they delved too greedily and too deep.
Mm-hmm.
As Icarus flew too close to the sun. And they woke something that they could in no way have fought. Gandalf is a Maya, and it takes everything he has to go toe-to-toe with a Balrog.
Mm-hmm.
So, like...
There's 2 or 3 instances in Tolkien's Legendarium where someone goes one-on-one with the Balrog and kills them. The common thread between all of those is that the person who kills the Balrog also dies.
Yeah. So, 2 things to keep in mind. The Balrog that we see in the films and the Balrog that is in the Fellowship, that's a small one.
Yeah, it's not Gothmog, the Lord of the Balrogs.
At the fall of Gondolin, how many Balrogs were there? Which included Gothmog.
Good question. I'm not going to get into it because Tolkien nerdiness that I don't need to get into. Basically, he changed the number of Balrogs in the universe. He didn't even know. But there were enough Balrogs at Gondolin. How about that?
100 Balrogs. We'll say 100 Balrogs at Gondolin. That sounds like a correct word.
We'll say 3 to 100. How about
Somewhere between 3 and 100. And the one in Moria is a small one. For those of you who have played Middle-earth Shadow of War, Targoroth is a small Balrog.
Mm-hmm.
Not the ones that were sent to Gondolin.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the poem. Interesting how we have one stanza that changes tone. This very last stanza. The world is gray, the mountains old, the forge is fire, is ashen cold. No harp is rung, no hammer falls, the darkness dwells in Durin's halls. Moria. It's dark, it's cold, it's infested. The shadow lies upon his tomb in Moria in Khazad-dûm. But still the sunken stars appear in dark and windless Mirror. Which Mirror is a pond, a pool of water. Mm-hmm. There lies his crown in water deep, till Durin wakes again from sleep. That's very Arthurian. If I might just add. The glory of the king lies underwater until he again returns. And there's an old Germanic tale about a king under the mountain who will sleep. What is it? That the king will sleep until his beard grows long enough to wrap around the chamber 7 times. And then he will rise and wake again. It's a very old Germanic tale, so something else that Tolkien appears to be drawing on. But the dwarves clearly have this idea that Durin's very crown is sunken beneath the waves. It's sunken underwater until he wakes again, and that Durin is not actually dead but only sleeping, and that one day he will wake and he will rule again, and we will once again have a time of glory. Because everything, the dwarven life, was at its best when Durin was king. This air of hope at the very end, even the dwarves have hope. Because the dwarves have the distinction of being the only race that is not created by or descended from something that was created by Eru himself. Mm-hmm. And even they, who sort of have this weird view of reality, this kind of belief in reincarnation, they still have a hope of some kind. Because the stars have not gone dim. They still shine in Mirror. Which again is the entire point of The Lord of the Rings, which I think everybody gets, is hope. As bad as things are, there are still stars in the sky. And there are still the sunken stars appear in dark and windless Mirror. Dark and windless. The pond is still and clear.
It's waiting.
Waiting for the king to reach in and grab his crown.
At a time that we know not, but we know it cometh. Our listeners can tell that one of us is an author and one of us is not. That's so well done, man. Once again, I have things I would add, but they almost detract from the beauty and the story of meaning that you've laid out for us. So maybe I'll keep my mouth shut. Maybe I'll keep my mouth shut. I think I will.
I would not ever order you to keep your mouth shut, but that is Again, as an aside, that's a great skill to practice, is the wonderful tradition of keeping your big mouth shut.
Yeah. So I will open it, but about something else. And we'll talk about our last poem of the evening. This is a poem that you've heard part of before, and does not have an official name in the Fellowship of the Ring, but which I've decided to call Adventure. Because it is a poem that the hobbits sing while they are walking about the lanes on their way to Bree. And Bilbo Baggins had made the words, to a tune that was as old as the hills, and taught it to Frodo as they walked in the lanes of the Water Valley, and talked about adventure. So thus I'm calling it Adventure. Now when I get to the final stanza, those of you movie fans who remember enough about the movies will recognize it, and your brains will be blown. But for now, sit back and enjoy. Upon the hearth the fire is red, beneath the roof there is a bed. But not yet weary are our feet, still round the corner we may meet a sudden tree or standing stone that none have seen but we alone. Tree and flower, and leaf and grass, let them pass, let them pass. Hill and water under sky, pass them by, pass them by. Still round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate. And though we pass them by today, tomorrow we may come this way, and take the hidden paths that run towards the moon or to the sun. Apple and thorn and nut and sloe, let them go, let them go. Sand and stone and pool and dell, fare you well, fare you well. Home is behind, the world ahead, and there are many paths to tread, through shadows to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. Then world behind and home ahead will wander back to home and bed. Mist and twilight, cloud and shade, all away shall fade, away shall fade. Fire and lamp and meat and bread, and then to bed, and then to bed. Now, so the last stanza of that is also known as The Edge of Night, which is the song that Pippin sings to Denethor while his son Faramir is getting dutifully killed, charging Osgiliath on a vain mission at Denethor's request. So, very tragic, and has its own meaning in that particular context. So, while your brains are sitting being blown about that, to understand this poem in its proper place in the Fellowship, I want to just say, okay, disassociate that. This does not mean that. Part of it may mean that later in some interesting way, which, excellent writing. I forget actually if that's in the books at that point. But anyway, bring it back to the present. The present in the books. This is the hobbits going on an adventure. They're all together. They're all in the woods. They're going on an adventure. And for context, what happens right after this is the Black Rider shows up and they get off the road and they hide under the tree and, they distract him with the rock in the movies and they end up getting out of there. So it's literally right before that. It's that part of the story. But what would you be doing if you were on an adventure in the woods as a hobbit? Just as part of ordinary living, right? This is a fun adventure. We're off frolicking through the woods. So let's see what we can find. We found a new road. We found a secret gate. It's okay. So, and by the way, we're going to save that for later. Because this is a great adventure today. Like, this is a dope adventure we're on. But tomorrow there's going to be a cool one too. So you know what? I think we're going to plan ahead. We're going to see where that lane takes us tomorrow. We're going to see where that meadow goes tomorrow. There's a sense of discovery of all of creation that happens there. There's a sense of romanticism, of wonder, that Chesterton would be proud of, that these hobbits have, where they can just be wandering around down the lane or through the meadow or anything else, and they can see that weird rock there. And you'd be like, that's a cool rock. They can see that weird post there from, somebody's great gaffer who built something and it crumbled, but this thing left. And it's like, okay, that's cool. This lane that somebody carved. We have no idea who, but heck with it. Let's go figure out where that runs. We can add, they and we in our own lives, we can add a special meaning to so many small things. We can add a romanticism to so many small things. So many things like that weird rock in the meadow, that one great tree, that one path that leads somewhere, the bench at the top of the hill that who knows who put that there. I mean, it's been there forever. Someone carved a heart into something. Okay, so that was a thing. Or someone sat here. Someone sat here and just gazed over the valley. Or someone sat here and gazed at some shrubs. Whatever the case is, there is a romanticism that we can give to the things in life if we simply choose to. And it doesn't even have to be for a great occasion. You could imagine finding the random bench on top of a hill, right? And then being like, okay, that's a thing. And then later you find a woman that you love and you bring her up there, and now it's a special place for you guys because you chose to make that a romantic thing. You chose to make that a place with meaning. It already had meaning in its own right, but you've given it a meaning now. You've chose to see a layer of beauty there and to co-create with God a layer of beauty there that wasn't there before. And granted, we just said that about a bench on a hilltop, right? I mean, that seems kind of simple and kind of obvious, but it could be done with so many mundane things too, right? It could be done with that particular meal that you happen to cook on a random Thursday with your wife in the kitchen. You know? That pasta where maybe you did something slightly different, or maybe you didn't do anything different at all. You just chose to remember it. When we are fully present to the present, when we are fully present to the beauty of creation that's around us, and of the moment that we happen to inhabit at any particular moment, the time we've been given, the people around us, there is a beauty there that cannot be put into words. And perhaps it's fitting that it's put into the simple and frolicking words of a hobbit in this particular poem, because that's a proper way to encounter all of it and to remember it. That's not enough to do it justice, though. There's no words that will do it justice. And so in a way similar to the Lament for Gandalf, my point with this poem, not that Tolkien had a point when he wrote it, because he just wrote it and it fit the setting, is let the ordinary be extraordinary. You know, we might say, don't let the great be the enemy of the good, right? Mm-hmm. But isn't the reverse of that also true? Why can't the good be the great? Why can't that ordinary pasta dish on a Thursday become one of the core memories of my marriage, my future marriage, God willing? Why can't a random rock in the meadow be something that I remember and romanticize and have some sentiment towards? Because it was really cool and I passed it one day. And just, it was good. It was inherently good. It's just a rock, but it's inherently good. Why can't I have that attitude towards everything in life? And perhaps this is why I love Chesterton so much. Because Chesterton approached life with the attitude of a kid in a candy store. He was just like... He
never matured past the age of 12.
He really did. It's just like... Because he
but
was
in
just...
the best way
That's
possible.
So cool. That's so cool. That's so cool. That's so cool. That's so cool. He had this one line, I think, in Orthodoxy. You know, basically, why are the leaves on the trees green? It could have been any other color. And it's an interesting question, but the only person who asks that question is either somebody who doesn't care at all and is just bored out of their mind, or somebody who is literally filled with awe and wonder at everything in the world. And when you really think about it, why would you not want to live that way?
That's the kind of question that children ask. It's like I can see, you know, my daughter does this. She's 3, not quite old enough to be asking that kind of a question, but I can see myself sitting there with her just on a park bench, and her going, "Hey, Daddy, why is grass green?" A good friend of mine tells me frequently that her daughter asks just very weird questions, very weird and random questions, and one day they're sitting in the living room and her daughter just says, "Hey, Mom, what was the first season?" And my friend is thinking that she's talking about a television show at first, so she's like of what? And her daughter goes, like, of ever. Like, what was the first season? Who thinks to ask that other than a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
Like, what was the first season? And my friend is like, I don't know. She's a irrational atheist, so she's like thinking of all the scientific explanations. Like, I don't know, summer or winter? I don't know. If scripture is to be believed, it was spring. But anyway.
If common sense is to be believed, it was spring.
Yeah, this...
But anyway.
Most rationally, it was spring.
Mm-hmm.
Because anything before the first spring would have been a time before seasons were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And spring came about before man was made. But anyway.
If you're a hedonist, you think it's summer. If you're depressed, you think it's fall. And if you're really depressed, you think it was winter. But if you're a Catholic, you think it was spring.
You're pretty sure it was spring. But like, who thinks to ask that other than a child? Who thinks to go, hey, Dad, why do birds have feathers? Or, hey, Dad, Daddy, why do birds fly? Why do they have to fly?
Mm-hmm.
Why were birds made to fly?
Yeah, why don't they have motors?
Yeah.
And jetpacks.
Like that one, there was a one Vsauce video from like 15 years ago. It's like, why don't animals have wheels? There's like, I'm kind of glad you asked, actually. Because nobody asks questions like that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't animals have wheels? Like, wouldn't wheels be more efficient?
You would think.
But yeah, you would think so. But I don't know. It's just when I read this poem, what harkens to my mind is like I get the image in my head of like a Boy Scout troop. Just sort of tromping through the woods. And then one kid goes, hey, look at this cool rock. And then every other boy is like, oh, rock. Because boys are very simple. It's not that girls don't appreciate a pretty rock. The majority of girls will probably see the pretty rock and go, that's pretty, anyway, and then move on.
Mm-hmm.
It is most boys and very peculiar girls who will sit there and stare at a pretty rock for an hour.
They would do it.
Or did you ever have this? You and I are both Eagle Scouts. We have this sort of experience. Did you ever have this experience with your troop where you're hiking in a new place and maybe there's, what amounts to ruins? There's like there's an old structure of some kind where that's made maybe out of bricks or stone, but it's clearly man-made.
Okay.
But there's no plaque or anything nearby to indicate what there was there, so you just make up a story.
I didn't have that experience, but I could see us doing it.
Is that very boyish desire just to make up a story? Like you see this semi-monolith of rocks, and then there's the one kid that gets up there and goes, this is where the ancient warriors would come to prove their courage by jumping off of this high point. Because, of course, that's what a boy is going to do. Is like, I'm going to climb up here, and then I'm going to jump off. Or there's like a particularly perfect ledge for jumping into the water. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this is what the Indians did to prove how strong they were. And then you proceed to jump into the water that's 20 feet down below.
And hopefully you don't kill yourself.
And hopefully there's no rocks. Like, I don't see any rocks down there. Which is as far as any boy has ever thought before doing something dangerous. Well, I don't see any rocks.
Mm-hmm.
That's the distance to which it goes. That's why men die sooner than women.
This is also why moms aren't allowed on.
And why married men live longer, because a wife is going to go, nope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't see any rocks. That doesn't mean there aren't any down there.
Yeah. I wish I'd had that experience. Not that I had none of that. I just would have to remember.
I had that a couple of times. Usually you have to dig deep into memory that you haven't thought of for a little while. Dust it off. The lock on the box might be a little bit rusty.
Might be. But yeah, I mean, that's put well with the attitude of a Boy Scout troop, but the attitude of a child, right? I mean, there ain't something wrong with my eye, but there is a childlike attitude that the hobbits have, and not just these 4 hobbits, but the hobbits in general, right? Mm-hmm. towards living. They are only concerned with the simple things of life in many ways. It's not quite so simple. They're not an idyllic society. They're not all childlike. Ted Sandyman is evidence of the contrary, as is the Sackville Bagginses, and just read the books. Yeah. You'll find enough.
Yeah, but the ones that aren't childlike are miserable. We'll just put it that way.
Insufferable or whatever. But yeah, it's... If we all tried to live that way, if we all tried to romanticize the ordinary and make the ordinary extraordinary, would you not be more at peace? Would you not be more grateful for just the things in life that you already have? And I would argue that you'd be more holy. And as evidence of this, I guess I have Frodo and Sam. And also as evidence of this, I have Mother Teresa, who I believe was described by at least one person as basically being the most present person she had ever met. You know, like someone who, when you meet them, they're meeting you, and they might have 1,000 things going on in their life that day, but at that moment you realize that you are like the person that, you're the person they care about the most in that particular moment.
As far as they're concerned, in that particular moment, you are the only person that exists.
Yeah. I haven't had that experience often in this life. Or in a way, I guess, where you just don't expect it. But, like, the company that I take care of with my IT stuff, I remember going on a golf outing once, and I remember the CEO of this company came by in a golf cart. And I remember she was having a conversation quickly and just trying to get to know us, and it wasn't much time at all, but I remember there being some of that there. Mm-hmm. And I was just struck by it. I was like, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I respect you. Because that doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen very often.
I've heard that is one of the actual good things about the business world. Like, I hear the president is like this. Like, when President Trump meets you and he shakes your hand, he looks you directly in the eye, and it's like you're the only person in the room with him.
Well, I don't know how common it is in the business world, but
I understand that this does exist in the business world, where there are a lot of people that have the philosophy of deliberately doing this with people that you meet and making sure that you remember them. Because this could be somebody who could be beneficial to your company. This could be somebody that you may want to promote later on. Mm-hmm. Not in like a cynical sort of way, but it's like, be sure to be intentional with everybody that you meet, because you also want to make sure that, any potential employee is somebody that you want to work for you.
True. That
should want to work for you. So you have to be friendly and respectful to the people that are coming to work for you. But I hear that there have been people in politics and in business who are like this, where it's like, I am paying attention to you. And Charlie Kirk was like this. Like, when he would debate somebody, I remember one clip that I saw shortly after he died. There was this girl that came up, and she goes through the whole, like, I'm trans, and this, and that, and this, and that. And then she asks a question, and he says, before I answer, tell me about yourself. Because I want to know your story, because I want to answer you. There's a lot of people who get up behind that podium, and they will just knock down, they will just knock down the question. They will just knock down the objection and destroy it. And Charlie did that a couple of times, every now and again, when that was what the situation warranted. But the best ones are the ones who will look the person in the eye and say that I am speaking to you. I'm not putting on a show for the rest of this room. I am here to speak to you, and that is one of the reasons why we love Charlie Kirk so much. Because every question he answered, he was speaking to you. You were the only person he cared about in that moment while he was answering his question. And that girl that said, I'm trans and whatever, I think I'm really a man and all that. And he answered her question, and then he said, look, my biggest hope for you, my biggest wish for you, is for you to be comfortable in the body you were born in. Because that's how you were designed and how you were made. And he spoke directly to her, like a friend, like an older brother.
And it's that type of response that leaves you with only two choices, which is either farther into the dark or embrace the light. You do not get to sit on the fence when you encounter that. And that's because it's that powerful.
And when he said it to her, you can just see her eyes light up. That, like, this is the first time that somebody has actually seen her.
Yeah.
Somebody's actually seen a person. Not an idea to try to crush. Not a lib to own with facts and logic.
Mm-hmm.
But a human being. Rest in peace, Charlie. You'll be missed.
Yeah. But now imagine living your entire life that way.
Yeah.
With everybody you meet and with everything that you encounter. Like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And not that the hobbits did that, but
it's something akin to that, at least.
But this is an epic, and as an epic, it's inspirational. Why not at least think about that? It's like, wow. Why not try and do 0.5% of that this next day? When you go to work and have to encounter this piece of equipment.
Or that person.
That person. Yeah. That one. That one over there.
That one. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, you know. You know. Or that coworker. Or that middle manager. Or, you know, that thing that broke down again. Third time this week.
The third time this hour.
Third time this hour.
I've worked in a factory. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's common. That happens.
I should look at my work computer that way. I was down for a couple hours earlier this week. It's just old. Imagine if we did. And then imagine if we came home at the end of all that. I looked at our wife that way. Not just honey, I'm home, but honey, I'm home. And then my kids. And then the good meal, and I soaked it all in. And then the fire in the hearth. And then the good book that I'm reading. And the good beer I'm drinking. What you're imagining is life that is full of the same stuff that it was full of before, but you're more present to it. And with that, you've just gotten however many years younger. You become a kid again. You become full of wonder. You become full of joy. And give me an argument why you wouldn't want to do that. There's many, which all revolve to laziness and cynicism and like the same stuff I would give tomorrow when I'm going to work and choosing not to do this. Like, this is not how I live my life. But imagine if I did. Imagine if you did. You know? Just full of the goodness. Home is behind, the world ahead, and there are many paths to tread. Through shadows, to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. And who sits and does stargazing anymore? Then world behind and home ahead, because we've got food and drink and fire and bed. Basically, it's the rest of it.
In other words, in short, I'm going on an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
It's what Beren felt when he went to Doriath and saw Luthien.
Yeah.
You just don't have to go through all the pain he did to get there.
Yeah, it's like all of that never happened. Now this woman is the only thing that exists.
So that is what I have for adventure. It's Return of the King edition in the movies is not so wondrous.
Yeah. It's the poem that is portrayed in the books is much more carefree and sort of happy-go-lucky and simple than what is presented in the books or in the films. And it could be because, you know, in the film, Pippin makes the point of saying, we hobbits don't have any songs that are fitting for this occasion. It's because hobbit songs are all happy.
Yeah. You're a grumpy old man.
I don't think we have a song that fits this.
We have those, but they're cooler than you.
So he does the best he can. So he like searches through his mind with the songs in the poem that he knows, and he puts the words of a poem he knows that are the most likely to be interpretable as sad to as sad a music as he can possibly put them to.
Mm-hmm.
And we get home is behind the world. There are many paths to tread. Through shadow to the to the stars are all alike. Mist and shadow, cloud and shade, all shall fade, all shall fade.
Yeah, all the happy lines are just cut out.
They're just completely cut out. Everything that is mildly interpretable as sad.
It is well twisted to sadness.
I must also say, that is a very un-Hobbit-like tune. Considering
un-Hobbit-like
considering the last thing he sang was the only brew for the brave and true comes from the green dragon.
Yeah.
But it was well done. It was appropriate. Well sung. Well cut, well edited.
Mm-hmm. But perhaps spend this week thinking more of the happy version.
Yes.
The fellowship version. And wherever you're watching this, head back to fire and lamp, and meat and bread, and then to bed, and then to bed.
Have a good night. Sleep well.